Welcome to Future Self Dreaming. My name is Kukulcan. In the last presentation, I outlined initiations that I had experienced while traveling through Mexico as a result of following the guidance of the morning star. This guidance had begun as a result of being awakened by a transmission from the light of the morning star as a child, an encounter that led me later in life through a series of unfolding synchronicities to understand the components and application of sacred geometry in igniting the human light body known as the Merkaba. This was initially through training as a facilitator of the ancient Egyptian mystery school teachings known as the ancient secret of the flower of life. Pursuing this path resulted in remembering an ancient connection to the lineage of Toltec shamans made famous by the writings of Carlos Castaneda, as I dreamed my reality into an encounter with another apprentice of his mentor, Don Juan Matus, named Marilyn Toonshond. This initiation at the Mayan temple site of Chichen Itza resulted in remembering a past life connection to the cult of Quetzalcoatl or Kukulcan, and the related teachings about the mastery of the serpent power of Kundalini. In today's presentation, I wish to begin to further expand upon my understanding that developed after this initiation in Mexico about the function of Kundalini and the process of awakening our multidimensional or higher selves, and how this relates to the body, in particular the endocrine system that supports the brain's neurochemistry and the craniosacral system. Throughout this explanation, I'll also be elaborating on other experiences that I've had that helped me to realize and integrate some of the previous encounters with non-ordinary reality that I've spoken about in other presentations. So, as mentioned, a significant component of my own spiritual development has come about due to understanding and the experiential application of sacred geometry and how this relates to Kundalini awakening the various components within the human body, such as the endocrine system, allowing for the development of our multidimensional consciousness beyond the limitations of duality. In future presentations, I intend to outline and demonstrate much of this geometric understanding. However, for the continuity of presenting my own storyline throughout these initial presentations, I'll continue sharing some of my own personal experiences and demonstrate these concepts in more depth at a later date. So, sometime after I had completed my training as a facilitator of the Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life workshops and had the encounters that had taken place in Mexico, I came across the work of an authority on the history, chronology, and calendars of the Mayan civilization named Hunbatsman in his book titled Secrets of the Mayan Science Religion. In this text, Hunbatsman details the sacred teachings of the Mayan priesthood that were hidden shortly after the invasion of the Spanish conquistadors in 1519. In revealing the metaphysics of these teachings, he explores the path to the illuminated consciousness of the feathered serpent known as Quetzalcoatl or Kukulcan. Hunbatsman explores the Mayan system of astrology, mathematics, and mythology that leads to an intimate relationship with the natural and cosmic laws which govern the seven forces within our bodies and the development of our consciousness, leading to the status of Quetzalcoatl or Kukulcan. These seven energies are synonymous with the seven primary chakra centers in the body and symbolized in the seven triangles in the body of the serpent that descends down the Kukulcan pyramid at Chichen Itza during the equinoxes when the forces of light and dark are balanced in polarity. On a side note, I accidentally described this Serpent of Light event that occurs at Chichen Itza in a previous presentation as being during the solstices, which in and of themselves are also powerful periods within the yearly cycle. Hunbatsman deciphers and translates much of the Mayan language, which also acts as a key for unlocking awareness of our relationship with the microcosm of our bodies to the macrocosm of the galaxy. He outlines that the term Kukulcan is actually made from three words, ku, kul, and kan, which can basically be interpreted as the sacred or God, as the intelligent energy or vibration that travels in the form of a serpent. As will be realized shortly, this serpent energy within the body relates to the form of the Great Spiral. The Mayans had extensive knowledge of the application of yoga and meditation practices for awakening the energies of the Hunab Ku, or the great galactic core within our bodies. The Mayan had a saying that all that exists is only movement and measure in the memory of Hunab-ku, which may be translated as all that exists is only movement or time and measure, space, in the memory mind of Hunab-ku, the one state of being or God. The Mayan people had many calendars for tracking the cycles of time delineated by the Hunab-ku, and to become a Quetzalcoatl or Kukulcan is to know how to transform solar, planetary, and galactic energies through our bodies and minds. Another amazing book that I found at a later date that also greatly assisted my comprehension of the Quetzalcoatl Kukulcan priesthood of Mesoamerica is titled The Return of the Serpents of Wisdom by Mark Amaru Pinkham. The cover of this book reads that the Return of the Serpents of Wisdom is an unprecedented work on ancient secret societies and lost civilizations. According to ancient records, the patriarchs and founders of the early civilizations in Egypt, India, China, Peru, Mesopotamia, Britain, and the Americas were colonized by the Serpents of Wisdom, spiritual masters who arrived in these lands after abandoning their beloved homelands and crossing the great seas. While bearing names denoting snake or dragon, such as Naga, Lung, Jedi, Amaru, Quetzalcoatl, Adder, and others, these serpents of wisdom directed the construction of dazzling civilizations where they and their descendants served as priest kings and enlightened healers of mystery school traditions. The Return of the Serpents of Wisdom recounts the history of these serpents, where they came from, why they came, the secret wisdom they disseminated, and why they are returning now. So from this body of work and others, I learned that the construction of these great temple complexes around the world that incorporate the knowledge and sacred geometry within the architecture of these buildings are generally also built upon sacred sites upon the land through which the Earth's Kundalini or serpentine ley lines cross. These nodal points are also entrances to the upper and lower worlds, as stairways to heaven climbed as initiates learn to utilize the energy of these gateways through the energy centers of their bodies. Sometimes psychoactive plants were used in conjunction with these initiations at these energy vortex centers to assist the flight of the Quetzalcoatl consciousness, as the redeeming fire of Kundalini united the polarities within the body. The pyramids acted as conducers and transformers of the solar resonance of electromagnetic life force radiating through the earth upon which these structures were built. Oftentimes, the buildings were constructed as fractals within the landmass upon which they resided, as well as fractal star maps of the greater cosmos encoded into the earth. So with these references in mind, related to the function of Kundalini activation in the ancient initiations into the Quetzalcoatl, Kukulcan, solar cult of serpent and phallus taught throughout Mesoamerica, let me turn more to my own experiences in igniting these serpentine energies. As mentioned in earlier presentations, my path of awakening has involved a deep involvement in understanding and applying the principles of sacred geometry. Part of this initial journey involved attending the 3-day Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life workshops, as originally taught by Drumvello Melchizedek, with facilitator Patricia Athena. This pursuit was to learn the meditation and breathing technique that activates the human light body, also known as the Merkaba. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this concept of the Merkaba, it may be helpful for me to give you a brief overview of what I'm talking about. Drumvello elaborates on his website that the history has talked about the Merkaba mostly as the vehicle that allows a person to ascend or descend into the higher or lower worlds. But actually, the Merkaba is much more than just a vehicle of ascension. It can be really anything, since its primal pattern that created all things and all universes, both visible and invisible. You can see the Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, volumes 1 and 2, for more information. In the Bible, there is a reference to Ezekiel and the wheels by which Ezekiel ascended into heaven. This was the Merkaba. In the Torah, there is reference to the Merkava, as it is spelled in Hebrew, which has 2 different meanings. One meaning is chariot, which is a vehicle. The other is the throne of God. When the 2 definitions are combined, the true meaning comes to life. In ancient Egypt, this primal pattern was called the Merkaba. It was actually 3 words, not one. Mer meant a kind of light that rotated within itself. Ka meant spirit, in this case referring to the human spirit, and Ba meant the human body, though it also could mean the concept of reality that the spirit holds. And so the entire world in ancient Egypt referred to a rotating light that would take the spirit and body from one world to another. In the modern world, there are teachers worldwide who are helping people to remember the Merkaba, involving a process where the human body is transformed into light and translated by an incredible birth into a new world. It is achieved through a meditation that requires the mind, heart, body, and spirit to completely integrate in one pattern of light and transcend the human limitations of this reality. What exactly is the Merkaba? Technically, it is an electromagnetic field sitting at about 4 degrees Kelvin, found primarily within the microwave range that is entirely geometric in nature. Specifically, the geometry used is called sacred geometry, as this particular geometry is found in the creation patterns of all things in creation. The Merkaba field is extremely complex, involving the 5 platonic solids and other sacred polyhedrons. It is believed to extend through all possible dimensions and parallel universes and can possibly change its nature from electromagnetic to whatever is appropriate. The blueprint of the Merkaba is found throughout nature, such as in the formation of a galaxy. One of the functions of the Merkaba is to act as the vehicle to take the spirit and body into the next world. However, this function is impossible to obtain until something changes within the person. The Merkaba is situated around the human body like a geometric web that is dormant and non-functional, waiting for the right moment. When the spirit that inhabits the body remembers that it is there and begins to change certain aspects of itself, an incredible transformation begins to grow. It was believed in ancient times and even written about by the Hebrews that the Merkaba could be turned on by certain principles in meditation. This involves breathing changes and mind, heart, and body changes that alter the way the person perceives the reality. And yet it is clear that the Merkaba can also be activated, as the New Ages say, by other methods besides the male-style instructions using breathing changes mentioned above. It can also function through methods that are purely female, through the living of qualities such as love, faith, trust, truth, and compassion. The Merkaba can spontaneously become alive. In other words, very human, pure character can translate into a living Merkaba field around the person, even if that person doesn't initially know that it is there. And yes, absolutely, the Merkaba is alive. It is a living field, not a purely mechanical field of energy. And because it is a living field, it responds to human thought and feeling, which is the way to connect to the field. So the computer that guides the Merkaba is the human mind and heart. The possibilities are endless. At a certain and specific moment in a person's Merkaba field, a person's Merkaba field can become alive, and your character is the key to this process. Regardless of who you are at this moment, good or bad, you can change your character, and it is completely within your control if you focus. In changing yourself, your Merkaba can become alive, and once it is alive, everything is possible. The Merkaba enables us to experience expanded awareness, connects us with elevated potentials of consciousness, and restores access and memory of the infinite possibilities of our being. When the Merkaba meditation is performed correctly, the Merkaba fluidly integrates our feminine, intuitive and receptive, and masculine, active, dynamic aspects of our mind and spirit. So what will happen when you learn this process in the meditation? When you learn about the Merkaba in a Flower of Life workshop, you will not only intellectually understand the geometric fields, but you will personally experience them and feel them tangibly around your body. These geometric energy fields around our body can be turned on in a particular way, which is also connected to our breath. The Merkaba meditation incorporates a 17-breath process along with visualizations and mudras or hand positions that are key to the correct use of the Merkaba. Activating the Merkaba through the 17-breath meditation will result in deeper contact with your higher self. Learning the steps of the Merkaba meditation alone is not enough to fully experience the benefits of an activated Merkaba. Anyone can learn technical steps through a book or video. There is at least one other factor that is even more important than learning the Merkaba meditation itself. which is the opening of the heart and the experiencing of divine love, as it is divine love or unconditional love that is the primary factor that allows the Merkaba to become a living field of light. Without divine love, the Merkaba will only be a series of steps and will have many limitations. In the Flower of Life workshops, we explore special ways of opening the heart to reawaken compassion, unconditional love, and inner harmony so that you can have direct experience with divine love while learning to activate your Merkaba. Direct experience of our greater potential gives us the opportunity to go far beyond what words and books can teach. Our workshops are experiential while still giving the necessary left brain information required for a full understanding of the course material. So with this introduction to the Merkaba having been outlined, I'll share a discovery that I had during my own journey in activating it. So while in the process of completing my Flower of Life facilitator training in 2005, I had the opportunity to assist with several workshops previous to this with facilitator Patricia Athena. Shortly after the initial course that I took, I noticed an interesting anomaly occurring within my body, which I have come to realize is of major importance to the practice of the Merkava meditation. After attending the workshop and practicing the meditation regularly for some time, I decided to perform an extended ceremony incorporating elemental clearing of my energy fields. I'd spent an afternoon collecting firewood from nearby properties from where I was living, dug a small pit in the backyard, created a fireplace, and that night sat out upon the earth beneath the stars, stilling my being by staring into the fireplace and gazing into the reaches of space above me, whilst drinking gallons of water and being smoked constantly by the fire. After about 6 hours, I decided to have a good soak in a bath, and then I retreated to my bedroom to practice the Merkaba meditation before bed. When going to practice the meditation, my body was so loose and relaxed from being around the fire and in the bath that the usual energetic experience within my body was much more intense. And during the 17 breaths of the meditation, there is a particular point at breath 15 when the counter rotation of the tetrahedral fields of the light body creates an energetic field in the shape known as a torus. This here that you can see is a torus. As I demonstrate, I'm rotating this torus through itself, and you can see the spiral that is emerging through the torus. So the toroidal field has a spiral known as pi, or the golden mean spiral, which infinitely spins through its center and is at the heart of all beings. For detailed imagery and further understanding of the torus, I suggest that you watch the documentary called Thrive, produced by Foster Gamble, featuring Nassim Haramein, who is one of the foremost researchers of sacred geometry and who has established the Resonance Project. So during the workshops, the Flower of Life workshops, there were specific practices that allowed students to open the heart so that they might connect with the energy of the golden mean spiral and be able to access this effect during the practice of the Merkaba meditation. One of these practices involves several people holding hands to create a tetrahedral geometry around a person standing in the center of this vortex so that they can relax their body and have a very tangible experience of this spiraling energy within their body. The golden mean spiral may be termed the alpha and the omega because it has no beginning and no end. It's the geometric ratio that traverses all dimensions and planes of existence. And when a being learns how to navigate on this heart spiral, they can use it to travel into other planes of reality. The golden mean spiral is like a non-physical blueprint or template for creation within the third dimension, and we see its shadow everywhere throughout nature, such as in seashells, pine cones, sunflowers. The geometry of our body uses this spiral, and when studied a little, we can see that the golden mean is the key to all sacred languages because the shape of the letters of each alphabet come from the rotation of the golden mean spiral through different degrees of spin. In fact, we even hear these languages through spirals in our eardrums. The words spirit and spiral come from the same root, telling us something profound about this relationship, that we have spirit through the nature of, that we can access spirit through the nature of the spiral. So when I was practicing the meditation this particular evening after getting out of the bath, I was opening my heart to connect with the energy of the golden mean spiral and the torus, and due to my body being extremely relaxed, the spinning effects became quite intense, and I could sense the upward movement of Kundalini from the base of my spine, and my head was wanting to move around and begin to stretch my neck in the process. So I just allowed this to happen for maybe 10 minutes. The movement of my head became quite intense, began rocking from side to side, from one side to the other, until finally, after a period of this went on, my head tilted back and my chin entered this angle. And my entire head locked into place, and all of a sudden everything became still all of a sudden. And in this position, with my head tilted back, I felt like I was sitting in the eye of a hurricane, completely still at its center, with my Merkaba field spinning around me. As I observed the phenomena that had just taken place in my body, I noticed that my head was tilted back at this angle. The area of my heart felt much more open, having a profound stillness in my mind and body. From this point, my third eye began to have an array of visions that began to occur, and the entire experience felt as though something within my being had been recalibrated and reset, as though something was adjusting my whole body like a craniosacral session. I went to bed, and the following day I was surfing the internet, and I somehow found my way to some research by a man named Dan Winter, who is an absolute wealth of information on all things to do with sacred geometry and hyperdimensional physics. I'd heard Dan's name mentioned on several occasions in discussions about sacred geometry, but had not been exposed to much of his work. And in a strange act of synchronicity, the first thing that I stumbled upon on his website was a picture of the Sphinx's head next to a human head, with geometry showing the tilt angles of the heads. The title of the article was about the 32-degree tilt. And as soon as I saw this image, my hair stood on end, and I realized that my head had been in the exact same position during the experience that I'd had the previous evening. So I quickly read on to find out what this was all about. The subject title of the email in the article was Merkaba Tilt, and had been sent from somebody named Shakura Ray. It read, "Are you ready for the next step in developing your Merkaba? The star tetrahedron takes us to the door, but we need the dodecahedron based on the phi golden mean ratio in order to become superluminal and enter the timeline wormholes." Superluminal meaning faster than the speed of light. Getting through the speed of light is only possible at the moment the head tilts back 32 degrees and the cube formed from two star tetrahedrons settles into the dodecahedron. Just to quickly demonstrate this, this here is a tetrahedron. When we have two of these, one facing up, one facing down, we get the star tetrahedron. This will nest into another of the Platonic solids called the dodecahedron. And I'll demonstrate more in a moment, but this is known as the Star Mother. It's a geometry developed by Dan Winter that nests all of the Platonic solids fractally within themselves. So I'll continue reading. So what does this mean in simple language? In order to explain this and hopefully give it meaning to you, remember that the Merkaba is based on the sacred geometry of love and compassion, which is the ability to nest or embed geometric fields into the heart. For our organic Merkaba, as opposed to a metal Merkaba or spaceship, to be complete and able to transcend the speed of light, it must consist of embedded, shareable, and totally distributable, non-destructive waves. Love, of course, is the ultimate shareable emotion and universal unifying force. So the trick is to get love geometrically embedded into our Merkaba in such a way that its waves are ever distributable and launch us through the speed of light. The phi ratio does that, but first we need to get our Merkaba forms aligned. For those who don't quite understand this sort of thing, the phi golden mean ratio is approximately 1.618 on to infinitum. It is such that the ratio of the whole to the larger portion is the same as the ratio of the larger portion to the smaller portion. So the waves continue to add and multiply forever and ever, non-destructively and shareable through the speed of light. With the star tetrahedron Merkaba, The geometry allows us to hold and build energy within our field, but it does not allow the waves to implode non-destructively. Therefore, it is not a complete Merkaba and cannot enter warp speed and propel us through dimensions. So let's look at the geometric progression and the manner in which we can get our Merkaba up to speed. If you've been building your Merkaba, you have visualized the star tetrahedron around you. Geometrically, within that star tetrahedron, where they cross, sits an octahedron. I'll just show you that quickly. This here is an octahedron. If you look at the star tetrahedron, where you have these two tetrahedra, there's an octahedron at its very center. So you may have been taught in some Merkaba techniques to visualize an octahedron outside of your tetrahedron. This is not only incorrect, but not necessary, as the octahedron exists within the two tetrahedron without any intention of developing it on your part. By joining the edges of the tetrahedron, one produces a cube. So I'll show you. If you look at this star tetrahedron, the two of them together, if you look at them from this side, if you were to connect these points, you'd actually form a cube. So the dodecahedron surrounds the cube. Again, this may be hard to see, but inside this, where these white balls are, it forms the 12 sides of a dodecahedron, and inside that is the cube, and inside that is the star tetrahedron with the octahedron in its center, and the outside of this is the icosahedron. So the dodecahedron surrounds the cube. When one tilts the cube 32 degrees, it fits perfectly into the dodecahedron, generating the phi golden mean ratio at their edges. Specifically, when the cube tilts into the dodecahedron, the edge of the dodecahedron becomes 0.618 phi of the cube. Only at this point do the waves propel constructively across infinite harmonics and through the speed of light. I'll just show you quickly. The cube, when rotated 5 times through 72 degrees, forms the dodecahedron. And this here, you may be able to see there are 5 cubes nested within the dodecahedron that form the dodecahedron with pentagrams on each side of it. So that's the five cubes within the dodecahedron. I'll continue. So let me say that this article and the following technique are not for those who have never activated their Merkaba, but is for those who already do the tetrahedral Merkava meditation. There are a few such techniques on the market and a few people who claim to teach advanced Merkava fields. Unfortunately, these techniques vary, so it can be very confusing. From my own personal experience, I learned the basic version taught by Drumvello through the Flower of Life organization. I then took a workshop from an individual who was traveling around the country professing to teach advanced Merkaba techniques. However, no matter what technique I learned from him or anyone else, my higher self told me that it was not complete. There was always something missing. I wasn't sure what that was, but I was determined to find out. I got a clue of the missing piece after taking the advanced course. He taught various geometric forms other than the tetrahedron, referring to them as other Merkaba fields. When I left his course, I knew the missing piece had something to do with the geometric shapes, but as close as he came, he still didn't have the complete picture, at least not complete enough to satisfy myself. About a year later, I spent some time with Dan Winter. In our conversations, we discussed the Merkaba, and he mentioned that the head needed to tilt back 32 degrees, entering the phi golden mean ratio before it could actually transcend the speed of light. Well, I didn't know phi from pi, but when he said that, every cell in my body twinkled, and I knew I had finally found the answer. I tried the technique, as did my friend, and the sensation was amazing. It was not like any Merkaba activation we had ever experienced. The 32-degree tilt is also the tilt angle of the chin of the Sphinx and corresponds to the pump mechanism of the Kundalini. You may experience this yourself when you do the technique. When your head tilts back and your Merkaba spins faster than the speed of light, you may notice that your anus involuntarily contracts and your Kundalini becomes active along your spine. There goes my Flower of Life behind me. So, the article referred to reading more of Dan Winter's research on his website, and he goes on to explain, or the article goes on to explain the full 17 breath Merkava meditation activation technique, adding the 32-degree tilt. As I explored more information from Dan Winter's webpage about the nature of Kundalini and the 32-degree tilt, I came upon a reference to Quetzalcoatl, Kukulcan, that stated, "The Mayans say when the serpent feeds the eagle, then Quetzalcoatl, the many-plumed one, returns." Dan Winter went on to explain this concept, that the 32-degree tilt, as the head gently rolls back at the key moment when the cube nests into the dodecahedron, is the true Merkaba, and that at this moment when the pelvic tilt opens the organ Kundabuffer, it achieves a symmetry with the cranial tilt, opening the gates of the occiput, permitting the final sacrocranial juice pump out of the mouth of the amygdala. This is the mouth of the reptilian brain choosing to feed its best to the high bird brain. Dan Winter suggests that the psychodynamic of the moment when you choose to let your chin open out into this awe position corresponds to, firstly, the moment when you believe that you've found something shareable to feel, the ending of secrets. Secondly, the moment when you move from a head to a heart center of gravity. And thirdly, the moment when the sacrocranial juice pumps, opens the gates of the occiput. For more information about these concepts and other related subjects, check out many of Dan Winter's books, including this one, Implosion, The Secret Science of Ecstasy and Immortality. So, with all this in mind, the explanation of the Merkaba, the discovery that I had about the 32-degree tilt and its relationship to the Merkaba and Kundalini, I had a profound realization that set in for me many years later after completing my facilitator training. This came about while facilitating a Flower of Life workshop in Melbourne. While teaching, I was relaying my experience that I have outlined in previous presentations about the encounter that I had during one of the meditation techniques that we practiced in the first of the advanced Flower of Life trainings called the Seed of Life 2, or Seed of Life 1 rather. I explained the encounter that I'd had with an interdimensional being during this meditation that had interacted with me in what felt to me as physical as any other regular interaction, and yet I realized what was taking place at that time, and I explained how my egoic mind struggled to come to terms with what had occurred. I relayed in this presentation how the effects of this encounter resulted in me having an experience of bilocation that lasted an entire night, and how another one of the encounters I had another one of these encounters several weeks afterwards whilst traveling through Egypt. As outlined in that presentation, where I described this full experience, I explained in detail to the workshop group that I was facilitating that during the encounter in this meditation, that the interdimensional being had put its hands down either side of my head, which was resting on a pillow while in this particular meditation. And I explained how my head had gently rolled back on the pillow as it had done so. And in elaborating on this, all of a sudden I made this profound connection with the story that I've just conveyed in this presentation about discovering the nature of the 32-degree tilt from my early Merkava meditation experiences. It dawned on me that I had been given assistance by the interdimensional being as it gently tipped my head back into the 32-degree tilt position by adjusting the pillow beneath my skull and facilitating this energetic opening, resulting in a massive release of Kundalini energy that had been built as a result of this intensely focused exercise, and through my body opening the third eye or the pineal gland due to passing the Kunda buffer located at the occiput or the base of the skull when the head is tilted back. So having this realization, as well as this, the awareness of who this interdimensional being was occurred to me. The answer to that question is one that is challenging to explain linguistically in terms of a linear perception of time and space, but in all probability that interdimensional being was most likely me. It was my future self. So I hope that you've appreciated this presentation and perhaps gained something valuable or had some insight triggered for you. If you'd like to continue this journey with me and more episodes of Future Self Dreaming, please hit the subscribe button And you can check out offerings on the website futureselfdreaming.com and follow Future Self Dreaming on Instagram and Facebook. In Lakesh.